At 11 with Sharon Gonzalez. Hi, I'm Sharon Gonzalez, and today we'll be talking about the years leading up to the Civil War. So in the years leading up to the Civil War, the first relevant topic to take place in America was when the North and South first split up. They had two completely different views on slavery. The North was against slavery. They also had smaller farms. They owned factories, which were powered by the immigrants that moved there, since they had more immigrants than in the South. Transportation in the North was also easier, and they were very well educated. While in the South, they were forced slaves because they needed them to work in their farms to help with things like the cotton gin, since they were developing in technology. Transportation in the South was also more difficult, and they tended to be less educated than those in the North. During this time period, the abolitionist movement had just begun, which was the attempt to stop the expansion of slavery.
Another topic that we'll be discussing today is the Missouri Compromise.
We'll be discussing two compromises leading up to the Civil War: the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Compromise of 1850. So, a compromise is when two sides of an argument give up one or more of their claims in order to come to an agreement. The Missouri Compromise occurred when there was a big issue of slavery in the west of the United States. Missouri, being in the South, applied to the Union as a slave state. You're probably asking, who had more states, free states or slave states? Well, if Missouri became a slave state, then that would mean that slave states would have less representation or power in the government. Less power in the government would mean that they would have unequal representation when it came to making decisions. Therefore, slave states would be able to unbalance them at any time. A compromise would have to be made that would mean that Maine would become a state of its own and join the Union as a free state. This brought back equal representation between the North and the South. One of the first compromises that had to be done in the years leading up to the Civil War. The next one is the Compromise of 1850. Known as Henry Clay's Compromise. California was admitted as a free state, which meant that the South would have no federal restrictions on slavery. Texas lost its boundary claims to New Mexico, and the fugitive state law was passed, which means that Northerners were required to return runaway slaves to their rightful owners in the South. Many times slaves would leave because they were being mistreated, and Northerners would try to hide them since they were against slavery. This meant that no slaves could be hidden anymore, and they all had to be returned, although Northerners found their way around that and tried to hide them in other ways. Slaves were being discussed everywhere. Most Northerners didn't like the idea of slaves, while most Southerners did. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin during this time period leading to the Civil War. The Fugitive Slave Law Act forced runaway slaves to return to their rightful owners, and Uncle Tom's Cabin sent a message throughout the country of how inhumane slavery was. This book touched the hearts of many moderates who became abolitionists. In the North, people became personally more aware of the horrors of slavery. This caused abolitionists to further move from the North, and the book sold over 300,000 copies. While in the South, they were outraged that they believed that the book was irresponsible and with many overstatements. Abraham Lincoln told Harriet Beecher Stowe that she was the woman that wrote this great book that caused this intense war, because it rose the sectional differences of the United States. Uncle Tom's Cabin caused a lot of Americans to dispute amongst each other. Sectionalism became even stronger, where one part of the country was more faithful to their part of the country, and they wouldn't change that for anything. Northerners became more united, while Southerners became more united, which caused the country to split even more, which is why Abraham Lincoln accused Harriet Beecher Stowe, of causing this war. Here's a copy of Harriet Beecher Stowe Uncle Tom's Cabin book would look like back then. The North versus South did the two compromises, and Uncle Tom's Cabin were the